You're watching the Jacksonville History Show. I'm Harry Reagan. Now we focus on historic districts, how they're created, why they're a good idea, why they might be a bad idea, the good and the bad. And our guests are people who have been involved in creating some of Jacksonville's historic districts. Joel McEachin from the city's Planning and Development Department, and Janie Jones, who helped create the Springfield Historic District. Welcome both of you to the Jacksonville History Show.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Joel, how many historic districts do we have?
Well, we have 3 local historic districts. Now, we may want to clarify that there are 2 kinds of historic districts. The National Register Historic District, that is districts that's on the National Register of Historic Places, and then there can be City of Jacksonville districts. We have 3 City of Jacksonville districts.
And one is so small that it hardly qualifies by comparison to the other 2, which are quite
That's
large.
correct.
And so the main 2 that we will probably talk about this evening is Springfield and Riverside.
That's correct.
And Janie, let's talk about the early days of creating the Springfield Historic District, why people thought it was a good idea and so forth.
Well, people thought it was a good idea because, you know, Springfield was threatened by a lot of, you know, non-conforming buildings that were being built. You know, we had Jiffy Marts right next to historic structures, and there was a real sense of the people who were moving in there that we needed to do something to preserve and save the character, the historic character of this area, because we felt it was important to the history of Jacksonville, a valuable cultural resource.
And you went for a national designation first.
Right. We went for national because there was no local designate. There was no mechanism, no law, no mechanism to have a local district. So the people involved in Springfield preservation and restoration felt that National Historic District was really our only recourse at that time.
Now, Joel, City Council, somewhere around 1990, I guess, passed legislation to allow local districts to be created. Give us a little bit of history of that.
Well, the process to establish local districts resulted from the comprehensive plan. The city in the early 90s had to develop, actually it was the late 80s, had to develop a comprehensive plan and for the entire city that addressed a lot of different planning issues. One thing that the comprehensive plan had to address was the preservation of historic resources, and the city chose to do that by doing a separate historic preservation element to the comprehensive plan. And an important objective of that element, an important recommendation to come out of that element was that the city of Jacksonville set up a process to designate local districts and local landmarks, and then also to set up a process where we could review construction activities that would affect properties in local districts.
So, Janie, property owners actually voted on whether to set up this Springfield Historic District.
Right. I believe that every property owner was sent by registered mail, you know, the information about setting up the local district. Well, they also voted, I think, for the national district, but it was based on people, the number of people who objected, and I think the local district was too, but people were sent registered mail, as I recall.
And it passed.
And it passed.
Were there, when you look at the district, it's a little bit, I guess the term might be gerrymandered. There's some business property that was not included, and maybe there was some thought that might have hampered passing it.
Well, those properties are probably considered non-contributing also, and then I think that there may have been property owners who did opt out of the district, but a lot of the properties, especially on Main Street, it's in, out, in, out. You know, when you look at the map, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and those properties were just not contributing to the historic character of the district.
Joel, you were involved in this process at that time. Was there a lot of opposition?
In the case of Springfield, there was not. And I think the reason for that was that the people who were really active in the neighborhood, the people who were really dealing with a lot of issues there, tend to be in support of this process, and they made sure they got their vote out, I guess is the best way to say it, and got their support. So there was not really a lot of opposition. Matter of fact, when it went to City Council, I think each and every member of the City Council went on as a sponsor of the ordinance that set up the Springfield Historic District.
Now fast forward 15 years or thereabouts, and we have a district that's been in operation. And by the way, at a certain time, RAP came along, and so 2 major districts. But what's your analysis, Janie, of what has happened, at least in part, as a result of the historic district being created?
Well, I see a lot of renewal in Springfield, a lot of interest in moving there. There's been a lot of infill housing that's compatible with the historic character of the neighborhood. I just think it's been, you know, the basis for the revitalization of that neighborhood. I think that because it is protected, you know that the historic character of the surrounding buildings. If you restore your house, that somebody's not going to come in and, you know, build a Jiffy Mart or destroy the historic character. So I just think that the district was really a vital part in the renewal of Springfield that we see going on today.
Mm-hmm. Joel, what do you think?
I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's very. I know the experience of Riverside Avondale has been very positive. The impact on property values. As a matter of fact, there's been a study that was done statewide that also compared the increase of property values when you do set up local historic districts, and the impact is very significant. And I think it is because of that sense of certainty that Janie was talking about, that you know that you're going to go in and that you're going to treat your property correctly and that your neighbors are going to treat theirs correctly.
I recall some discussion that I guess unavoidably there's some concern about property rights and so forth. And I know some other efforts to create historic districts have not gone through. So there still must be some people who have some hesitance. San Marco chose not to go that route, for example.
At least right now, and you are correct. There are people who are concerned about government getting involved in how they maintain and take care and treat their properties. I mean, you are adding on another layer of government, but we think the flip side has been very positive in the sense that it's stabilized and increased value in the case of Springfield and increased value in the case of Riverside Avondale.
Of course, Janie, it's kind of a thin layer of government, but if you know about Joel's operation, it's not exactly a lot of bureaucracy. They're just very small.
Anyway.
But and so we were talking about before the show that in large part it's up to people who live there and care about the district to let Joel know when they see something illegal happening.
Exactly. It's up to people who care and are aware of what the guidelines are, what the restrictions are, you know, to kind of blow the whistle or to let as you say, we don't have any enforcement police, historic enforcement police, so it's up to really the people who live in the district to police, you know, the enforcement of the historic guidelines.
Was there kind of a campaign at the time to get people to vote yes, or at least provide them with information about it?
Yes. We, you know, certainly the people who are involved in Springfield preservation and restoration that had, you know, spent 20 years practically trying to get this local designation, you know, were active. And when people would call with concerns, you know, we would try to explain the benefits to them, you know. So there was, you know, a real push to get this enacted.
And Joel, it's what is required in a historic district is not onerous, I would say. You know, we're not Savannah or Charleston. There's a fairly modest requirement in terms of what a property owner can do with his or her house.
We follow a set of standards, nationally recognized set of standards called the Secretary of Interior Standards for the Rehabilitation of Historic Properties, and they have some degree of flexibility so that you can tailor those standards to meet the unique architectural character of your neighborhood. So yes, we would need to have, say, detailed paint analysis or to determine what color somebody should be painting houses. We don't get involved in that. What we were trying to do is protect those character-defining features that define those houses and their architectures as best we can. So we try to tailor to the particular district in which we're setting up. And
no interior requirements.
Right. We don't review interior work at all. So you know.
And there's a process which is fairly user-friendly, I guess, for someone to appeal to the Preservation Commission and so forth.
Well, I think what in the local district we review, as I say, all construction work that impacts the exterior of these properties, And most of that review process actually occurs on the staff level. We do it administratively. It's a high percent. So you don't even see, most people don't even see the commission. They don't even are involved with the Preservation Commission. It's just when there's certain kinds of work that does require the commission's involvement, their review and approval. And that's tend to be more serious work that do impact in a significant way the property.
Janie, you told me before we started the show that this was something you were very proud of. Helping create the Springfield Historic District.
Yes, very proud of that. Yeah, I think it has lasting impact.
And people, there are a lot of newcomers. A lot of people have moved into the area that have no clue about what the history of creating this historic district was. It was a lot of hard work.
Yes, it was done with a lot of volunteers. We had very little money. We had a grant from the State Historic Preservation Bureau to do the original survey. You have to document your resources before you can apply for a National Register district. And we used many volunteers to do the legwork. There were over 2,000 properties involved in the survey, 100 blocks, and we had just less than a year to do it. So we used a lot of people to do photographs and do some of the research.
And we have to leave it there. Janie Jones, Joel McEachin, thank you for being with us tonight. That's our show tonight, the Jacksonville History Show. For more information, visit our website, www.jackshistory.com, or call 665-0064. So long.